Hey y'all, welcome back to the Tripod 2500, the official YouTube channel for the Tripod Podcast. If this is your first time here, welcome, and to everyone else, welcome back. On this channel, I do book reviews of Trinity University Press publications and related titles. This channel is meant to supplement the podcast by taking a deeper dive into the work of tripod guests. For today's tripod review, I am actually in the Hamptons in New York, where I've been working at the Hamptons Polo Club for the summer. And I am using the lovely podcast recording studio at the public library. So, shout out to them. This is a great place to work at. They have these awesome microphones. And yeah, so thank you to them. And go reach out to your public library. And today I'll be covering the TU Press publication Dreaming Red, Creating ArtPace by Linda Pace and Jarboe Russell in collaboration with Eleanor Hartney and 14 curators and critics. So this book is actually one of our older publications, but the reason I'm covering it today is I just released a new tripod episode with a member of Ruby City. So I figured why not give a deeper dive into Ruby City and the sort of memoir art history collection that is Dreaming Red, Creating Art Pace. So without further ado, let's get into the summary. So, Dreaming Red is the story of ArtPace, which is the amazing artist residency program in San Antonio, Texas. The residency was founded by Linda Pace. She's an artist, collector, philanthropist. In 1995, she founded it. If you haven't heard of Linda Pace and you live in San Antonio, I highly recommend doing even more research on her. If you've ever seen Ruby City or any of the artwork in the Ruby City Contemporary Art Gallery, that's all because of her, and she's really an incredible person. She passed away, unfortunately, not long ago, and I really enjoyed doing some more research on her after the tripod conversation and reading Dreaming Red. So, this volume tells Linda's story through the help of an award-winning author, as well as an essay by Eleanor Hartney and a series of other texts by those 14 curators and critics. The volume covers 80 years of history, and not only Linda's personal history, because there is a great autobiography section that she's written with family photos, all that rich history and her reflection on what she thinks brought her to the contemporary art world, philanthropy, and all of that. So that's a great part of it. But it's not only just Linda's history; it's also her vision for art pace and the history of contemporary art and artist residency programs. So great background provided by those essayists as well as Linda and so many of the other contributors to this book. Can't recommend it enough. It's a beautiful book. It's really big. I wish I had it here with me, but because I'm traveling, I don't. She made Art Pace, and this book is more centered on that, where the tripod episode is more focused on Ruby City's Contemporary Art Center. So this is a really great supplementary video to watch because it gives a lot more background that we don't get to dive into. But in addition, like I've already stated about the book, it's beautiful. And a little bit more of a summary of the residency itself is that each residency brings 3 artists, one from Texas, one from the United States in general, and then one international artist to bring in all these different perspectives. And the volume highlights some of their works, and all of these works have been exhibited, but because Linda believes in, creative freedom and the rights to your creative works, she allowed the artists to do whatever they wanted with their finished contemporary art piece or their finished installation. So some artists, as part of the installation, destroyed the work, right, as part of the performative art. And others, have sent it to other galleries, blah, blah, blah. So this volume is actually one of the only collections of all of those pieces together. It's one of the only places you can see all of them in one span and really get to see the progression of art pace and contemporary art through these artists' work. So that makes it really, really special. And I think that's about as good a summary as I can get to something that covers really so much. So I can't recommend enough reading this book. It came out quite a while ago, but not enough people have seen it, I don't think. So I'll get into the review and maybe that'll convince you. So to start, I'm just going to give a little bit more information on the structure and the writing style of this. It begins with Catherine, might mispronounce this, Conjo's intro to the volume that explains the actual organization of the book. So you can really get a feel for what to expect And if one part maybe isn't the reason why you picked out this book, you know what part to skip. So this is followed by Eleanor Hartney's essay about artist residencies and the history of them and how ArtPace fits into that history and how the work of the artists at ArtPace constantly was shifting to reflect history or the modern events that was going on, other, relevant topics, which again gives a great timeline of ArtPace's existence within the greater scheme of things and its future, really, and how life, that discussion of art imitating life or life imitating art. It's a great internal theme to this volume. There's also these fantastic photos throughout of the building itself and the construction it went under because it was a old automotive repair and sale center, so that turned into this beautiful residency place. And then there's a foreword by the author who helped Linda write her her works because Linda wasn't really one to write about her art. She was more focused on the art itself. And similarly, the author was really, really only writing oriented, not so much art orientated. So there's a really interesting dynamic between these two of you get like this really authentic, honest writing from Linda because she doesn't have a formal writing background, but it's really polished and distinct because of Jan's input and, mentoring, things like that, to really make this vision come to life. The book is broken into multiple sections, being the first is more related to Linda's childhood and the early forming of Art Pace. It breaks into her family, her early career, all that, and then the loss of her son and the future of the program and all of that. So it covers just everything. But then you get to all these photos of the artwork of the current works from 1995 to 2002 and then forward, and it's incredible to see the progression. Very great organization. It kept me interested the whole time, even though it's a thick volume and it's more of like it reads as like a coffee table book, like that you wouldn't know has all this amazing writing. So I was very, very pleasantly surprised. So now I'll get into the takeaways, which we break down similarly to how the Tripod podcast is broken down with people, places, and planet based takeaways. So to begin, I'll do the people takeaways. As I mentioned earlier, the ability to learn to go from art to writing and writing to art is such a interesting process. And even seeing the authors go from huge, political or societal concepts and bringing it down into an installation for people to see and enjoy and interpret in their own way, it just really opened my eyes to the multi-talented levels of people like Linda and other artists, and just how people's impact on one another through their creativity is globally connected. These international artists are coming in and they're meeting people from Texas, or then the Texas person is meeting somebody from somewhere completely different in the United States. All that exposure and perspective made these amazing artworks possible. So I really loved that theme of the book about the interconnectedness that art offers. And additionally, how much people can express so much more through art. Like the author who helped Linda write this is even saying like there's something about this art and the quality of Linda's work that I can't quite put into words. It's just outside of that boundary. So our ability to make art is something that makes us uniquely human, and I think that can definitely be seen in the works at ArtPace or at the Ruby City Gallery. There's just something outside of the written word or spoken word that art covers, and I found that really interesting on the human sort of level of things. And lastly, Linda grew up in a really matriarchal setting. Her mom was really just like very feminist, very like more involved in the family business and infrastructure than her husband. So Linda grew up thinking like women kind of took charge of things, whereas majority of the world, obviously that's not the case. And Linda's own husband's experience was with working with her and things like that. A really interesting dynamic. It was very refreshing, but also a sort of like a weird dystopian look at like a different kind of society and how men would feel. It was really an interesting take. And just showing that how much of her feminist upbringing still plays a role in the art that she collects and the artists that she invites to the residency. So that was a really interesting theme about like that sort of societal issue and gender role of this volume. So now we're gonna move on to place. So ArtPace is incredible. The primary goal is to service the creative impulse, which is, as Linda says, and with the support from Linda and all the resources available, monetary and otherwise, there's just no borders for these artists. Obviously, where they're coming from has a huge impact on the art that they're going to make, but the actual place of art pace itself is just this open-ended, full support sort of thing. And what these artists can come up with when there's no boundary is incredible. And that's what's made it so long lasting and what why Linda's work is so important. And I thought it was super interesting to have the artist be from 3 different places. It would have been very easy to only do local artists, but she went to the international level, broad United States and Texas. So there's so much influence in just that one art pace location. So it's just this like epicenter of cultural melding, influencing, and the beauty that can come out of that. So I think it's such a unique place. And lastly, of the place takeaways is that ArtPace in of itself took that old automobile shop and made it something entirely different. And to be able to create an amazing place, just like if you have a vision, a passion for something, you can make anything out of something. I mean, that place would have probably been torn down, run over, and made something completely new, but she changed it into this beautiful space that is still there, still going. The artist residency is still alive and well. And just some things, some places just need the right touch and the right amount of patience. And I found that really inspiring because I think a lot of the time we find ourselves in places we may not be happy with or we're transitioning through different times in our lives. And you just need to know that like places, we need to give ourselves the right patience and, hard work. And you could make something out of anything. So I found that really great as well as a takeaway. And lastly, the planet-based takeaways, meaning they apply broadly to global audiences, is having art like this out there in the world is so important to exposing people to accessible art. Linda really felt that a population who is involved with art, experiencing art, is going to be more dynamic and more successful. And I completely agree. When you read more or engage with art, you are opened to the experiences and perspectives of somebody else that you otherwise would never have had. So your capacity to be empathetic and motivated to make a change is much more present when you are connected to art. So Linda really felt that accessibility to art was critical, and that's why though the art pace residency is very selective and obviously heavily supported monetarily, the galleries themselves are open, right? The Ruby City Contemporary Art Center with Linda's collection and the work from ArtPace is free and open to the public. There is no boundary to seeing that work. So I think more people and places across the planet need to follow that example of prioritizing accessibility to art rather than making it this highbrow thing that nobody can reach. My last takeaway for Planet is this book, in and of itself, is one of the only complete collections of all the works that have gone through ArtPace. The artists are allowed to do whatever they want, as I said, and this book allows this work to exist forever. And again, to highlight the accessibility. Maybe you can't come to the Contemporary Art Center to see the work, or maybe museums in your area aren't as accessible, but this book you can pick up from the library, this library in fact, and you could get it online, whatever you want, borrow it from a friend, and you're going to be seeing a collection of artwork that can't be seen anymore, not even at the actual gallery. It's a very unique book, a very excellent commemoration to Linda and Chris, her son, and all that she created for the art community, for the city of San Antonio and beyond. So those are all of my takeaways for people, place, and planet. And I like to leave listeners with a couple of questions to consider since I was left with so many questions and inspiring thoughts after reading Dreaming Red. So I wanted to leave with just a couple. One being, how can you make art today? Art can be anything. It can be actions, it can be doodling on a piece of paper. Make some art. Engage with that side of your brain if you don't do that very often. And if you do it all the time, do something else. Try something new. And then, secondly, what is the last piece of art that you saw? When did the last time you visited an art museum? And if you can't remember the last time, look for a local art museum. Find those free and open events, maybe, an exhibition, things like that. It might really change your day, your perspective on something. It's always a great experience. Whether you like it a lot or find that you don't like it, it'll give you something to talk about and think about and learn about yourself and your community. So, on that note, thank you so much for listening to this. I hope it gives you a whole new insight into the newest episode. And there will be another new episode coming out in just a few days from when this review is released. So, thank you, and I'll see you next time.